Welcome to Session 2 of Your Best Self, a guide to achieving a balanced well-being, creating healthy boundaries. Today we'll be talking about healthy boundaries, your personal boundaries, poor boundaries and the impact they can have on your optimal well-being, and then how to make adjustments and create healthy boundaries to help us on our well-being journey. Creating healthy boundaries is so important to support us on this journey. Healthy boundaries help guide our choices by providing structure for our behaviors. If we can create behaviors or choices that support our well-being, even better to create them as habits so we spend less energy on making decisions for each choice. Sometimes we stray off course and revert back to old ways or possibly new ways that don't support our well-being. Here are some examples of healthy boundaries. Perhaps limiting technology to a certain amount each day, eating unhealthy foods like cakes, cookies, or fried foods occasionally or rarely, perhaps on special occasions, or saying no rather than overextending ourselves. Going to bed at a certain time each night so that we get 8 hours of good quality sleep, eating breakfast every morning, brushing our teeth twice a day, getting our recommended preventative screenings, exercising regularly, and sticking to a financial budget. Boundaries are part of self-care. They are healthy, normal, and necessary. So having healthy boundaries is really about caring for ourselves, knowing what supports us and gives us energy and what depletes or robs us of energy. What are some types of boundaries or habits that would help us to experience vitality? Maybe eating for optimal wellness, lots of physical activity, sleeping 8 hours, stress management, having good time management, and not overscheduling or overcommitting to things. Take a moment and think about your own boundaries, such as time management, organization, commitments, habits, finances, relationships. Does any one, or maybe more, area jump out for you as a possible weak boundary? We can all usually identify at least one area. So, what is the problem with having poor boundaries? Well, poor boundaries can result in a feeling of overwhelming, an inability to meet what is being asked of you, perhaps an overcommitment of your time or available energy. Can you think of an example where you complain maybe frequently? What is the scenario? Is it a repetitive scenario in your life? For me, it's traffic. Whining or complaining indicates a sense of victimization, an inability to control what is happening to you. Are you able to adjust your boundaries in order to control the scenario? If so, what steps would you have to take? For example, for me in traffic, I just need to leave myself more time. Healthy boundaries provide a means to empowerment. We may have repetitive patterns in our life where we feel we don't have the resources to meet the demands being asked of us. Perhaps it is in the area of finances or at work or in our personal life. We may not even be aware that we are complaining about a particular situation. Once we become aware, however, we're able to step back and see if poor boundaries may be at play. Here's a quote that captures the impact of poor boundaries. "Ill habits gather by unseen degrees. As brooks make rivers, rivers run to seas." Fortunately, the opposite is also true. Good habits gather by unseen degrees. As brooks make rivers, rivers run to seas. So just starting with small steps eventually leads to healthier behaviors, which leads to greater vitality and well-being. So, what will help us create healthy habits? Perhaps cultivating these things will help. Willpower, motivation, inspiration, and self-control. What will fuel you in making this change? Sometimes it is the example of another person, or perhaps we deeply want to be healthier. Self-efficacy, or self-esteem, means more than self-worth, a unique alchemy of confidence, courage, humbleness, and self-acceptance, even in the face of inevitable setbacks or slip-ups. 5 aspects of high self-esteem that help to build a healthy life are a sense of empowerment, a sense of uniqueness, having healthy role models, a strong social support, and experiencing small wins. Creative assertiveness, that's holding your ground, not swaying to others or the environment. This is keeping in mind that this is your journey and you are in charge of the process. And lastly, time management. Managing time well in this culture of distractions can be challenging. especially making time for our own well-being. If we don't make the time, our best intentions go to waste. Let's look at a popular goal that most people are not successful in achieving. How many people lose weight only to regain it back over time? In thinking about weight loss, what percentage successfully lose weight and keep it off? Here's what some research shows. In a large meta-analysis of long-term outcomes of dieting, research found that, in fact, 1/3 to 2/3 of dieters regain more weight than they lost on their diets, and that may be an underestimation. So what goes wrong? Perhaps the appeal of a quick fix, disappointment, regret, not invested in a change in habit. I often tell people when considering a diet or any major change, think first, is this something I can sustain as a total lifestyle change over 6 months, over 12 months? If the answer is no, then you may wish to rethink that path. Motivation, the unique alchemy of motivation, inspiration, and self-control. We can dig deep to identify the real source of our motivation and then create the habits to support us on our journey of well-being. Here's a great story of motivation. Is anyone familiar with a young Canadian gentleman named Kerry Fox? Terry was diagnosed with malignant bone cancer at the age of 18 and had his right leg amputated. While in the hospital, Terry was so overcome by the suffering of other cancer patients that he decided to run across Canada to raise money for cancer research. This was his strong motivator. In 1980, the then 22-year-old embarked on a cross-Canada run from the Pacific Ocean to the Atlantic Ocean. He called it the Marathon of Hope. He adapted a running style of hopping on one leg. This enabled him to cover around 26 miles each day, the equivalent of a marathon every single day. In 143 days, running 7 days a week, he covered 3,339 miles from his starting point in St. John's, Newfoundland to Thunder Bay. Unfortunately, when Terry reached Ontario, he was forced to abandon his run. His doctors told him that the cancer had spread and was now in his lungs. Seeing the x-rays of his lungs, the doctors were amazed at his ability to run at all, while his lungs were completely infected by cancer. He was asked how he kept himself going in spite of total exhaustion. He responded, quote, "I just kept running to the next telephone pole, and when I got there, I would focus on the next pole," end quote. We don't all have such a motivator in our quest to be healthier. But as Terry said, he broke his incredible journey down into small steps, like just running to the next telephone pole. We can keep this in mind as we embark on our journey. People that have gone through this weight loss process probably started out with those things mentioned earlier. Willpower, intention and belief to succeed with the goal, a plan or strategy in place, tools required, time management. Yet, the majority are not successful. Often overlooked, but very powerful, is the power of habits. It's habits that help us with self-control. If we have to keep making a conscious decision regarding every choice, we quickly run out of self-control. Over 90% of our everyday behaviors are habits, which means we are behaving without consciously thinking about it. Habits are just behaviors that have been done repeatedly until they are done on autopilot. In case of weight loss, we gain the weight back because we've reverted back to our autopilot behaviors. So, how can we increase the likelihood of success? How can we create new healthy habits? Let's look at what is going on behind our behavior. Perhaps uncover reasons for the high failure rate of dieting. This is the habit loop. Look how this pattern of cue, routine, reward, action, if done repeatedly, will create an autopilot habit in the brain. This becomes the path of least resistance, and we revert back to this as our usual mode of operation. So how can we change this? By breaking a behavior down to a series of small steps, and by pairing the new behavior with an established cue. Maybe an example is eating in front of the TV. You sit down to watch TV at night. That makes you want to eat some salty snacks like chips. You eat the chips. And every time you sit down to watch TV, you have the craving for chips or snack. Maybe before you sit down to watch TV, instead you bring with you a hot cup of herbal tea and sip that instead of resorting to chips. Or try taking a few deep breaths when you sit down, and then if you crave something, opt for a healthy snack like a handful of cashews or a piece of fruit. B.J. Fogg is a professor at Stanford University. He's done research on how to create a new behavior or habit. It's all about baby steps. Do something easy, you will tend to do it again. For example, starting at walking 5 minutes a day. If it ends up being easy, you will be less fearful and will try to do it again. Eventually, you will increase your mobility and time walking, and that will increase your motivation. Now, let's introduce a concept of tiny habits. B.J. Fogg has a program called Tiny Habits that's online and free. Simply register on his website, tinyhabits.com, which is also listed on the additional resource slide at the end of this. And try this 5-day program out to create a habitual behavior. So what is a tiny habit? It's a personal behavior. You do it at least once a day that takes you less than 30 seconds that requires little effort. Here's an easy enough way to start your journey to optimal vitality and well-being. Here are some examples of forming new tiny habits. Now, this comes from B.J. Fogg, so I'm using the example he gave in a lecture to a large group of participants. He said, "After I use the restroom, I will go back and do 2 push-ups. Eventually, you will build up the number of push-ups each day by doing this." Or another example he gave was, "After I brush my teeth, I will take 3 deep breaths. Eventually, you may end up using deep breathing as a coping strategy for stressful events." Remember to start with a behavior so small it seems ridiculous. Determine the trigger you will use to follow with the new behavior. And celebrate immediately. Give yourself a great big high five, way to go, you did it each and every time. In summary, let's review some key questions to help you start on your journey for the good life. What wellness robbers are you ready to take on? What specific behavior are you ready to change? What might be your motivation? What tiny habits might you start practicing? How ready are you to begin? Lastly, when are you ready to begin? But I did, slowly, one day at a time, one piece at a time. Today I eat less, exercise more, and get a lot more sleep. I spend less time in virtual reality and more time in actual reality. Today we talked about boundaries and the importance of having healthy boundaries. They empower us. How to create healthy boundaries using components of motivation, inspiration, and self-control. How to enhance self-control through habits. And lastly, how to create tiny habits. Practice your tiny habit for 5 days. As a reminder, the B.J. Fogg Tiny Habits website offers a 5-day program to try out the Tiny Habits process for behavior change. Pick up behavior you'd like to change and sign up. Thank you for joining us for Session 2, Creating Healthy Boundaries, in the Best Self, A Guide to Achieving a Balanced Well-Being series.